Okay, so this is Dandara. Dandara is a pretty simple game, but it does revolve around a unique mechanic of movement. The movement is very, as you can see here, I select angles and I can jump at them. Instead of regular platforming, this is the main form movement throughout the game. You may notice two different cursors. There's a green cursor and a white cursor. The green cursor is, god dang it, I hate that. I can't stand that ever being in my runs, I apologize. Those first two targets are a little awkward to hit, especially on the newest patch. So this is Dandara. Very simple, very straightforward game. The main form movement is, as you can see, these green arrows that pop up. That's actually where my cursor is currently located. And wherever I decide to put it, it'll try to suggest an angle for me to jump. The green is the angle that it's going to give me whenever I press A, and the white is where I'm suggesting for the game to jump at. So it's pretty important to use the kind of like autocorrect feature that has with our jumps to get either maximum distance jumps or very easy to line up jumps that we can do quickly. That's how we're able to move rather quickly throughout this game. Instead of like, say, another run where we need to wait for whatever to happen. Like this game, we're basically allowed to go. We picked up that first camp because we're going to death warp. I think that's one of the main mechanics we will be seeing throughout this run is just death warping. Death warping is super important throughout the run, and I'm going slow. It's super important throughout the run. We use about at least 5 death warps, and they all save some form of time. The reason why death warps save so much time is because this game is built very maze-like, and so getting between sections without having to wait for something to happen, it saves us a lot of time. So this is the first and only weapon upgrade we're going to get, the Arrow of Freedom. There are 3 arrows of freedom throughout the game. Each of them improve our little blaster shot by 1 more round coming off, which improves the damage of it by +1. It's very, very useful throughout the run, especially if we can fire accurately, because there's enemies that we will meet later on that take exactly 8 shots. There's enemies we will meet that take exactly 12 shots. And so having it just is really useful throughout the run for saving small time saves, and it's also really useful against the bosses for saving a ton of time. For example, against the first boss, we can try to get a first cycle. So we're coming up on grabbing one of the 2 normal safety precautions that we grab in the run, and wow, that was a really bad play. One of the first 2 safety precautions. This is the potion. We do grab 2 potions throughout this run, and they're both incredibly useful. They help us a lot in the kind of like middle gauntlet sections where we need to go long sections of gameplay without camping. And then they also help us in the later sections by being upgraded and being able to basically be an extra buffer of HP that we could use in the hardest section of the game, Golden Fortress. This is one of 2 NPCs we need to talk to in the beginning area to get things basically started. We can't collect the missile upgrade, which we need to get to the first boss before we talk to these, so it's very, you know, I need to do this and then I need to do that. It's kind of like a very long fetch quest. Wow, that was really ugly. It's kind of this very long fetch quest we need to do. Unfortunately, there will be moments where there's just going to be huge mistakes in movement because this game is pretty difficult just to run properly. That room is called the Big Walk. Getting not hit there while moving through it is called walking the dog, mainly because there's a lot of dog enemies and it's called the Big Walk. So, you know, creative name, I know. So we're on to the second of the people that can activate those colored panels, the one that activates the purple ones. Once we have him, we're going to death warp, and we're going to specifically death warp in a certain way. We're not going to normal death warp where we just go into the menu and like select return to camp. The thing about that death warp is it drains all of your salt and you can't get it back. The normal way of death warping, which you just die on something, that will let you return to the camp. And that's really important for any time you want to play this game rather quickly, because you can say, in this case, we will die and we will leave behind our salt. That salt can be collected later, and because upgrades are very important to this run, they're very central to this run actually, because in order to perform our skips that we have later, we need to collect enough HP, and we're barely going to collect enough HP when we do those. This is the first mini-boss. This is tank. Alright, that was the first mini-boss. That was tank. This beginning area is not very threatening. It's like taking extra hits here does not really mean that the run could be over at any moment. Later sections of the game, that will definitely be true, but for this section of the game, it's not so. So that was Thomas. We got him. He's now activated all the purple panels flying around the place. Very nice of him, because we need those. We're now going to death warp physically instead of through the menu. And then we're going to go on to collecting the missile. We're going to have to go back through the big walk again. Still a difficult room to do correctly because it does have a cycle of how the enemies walk through it. The way these enemies walk is consistent every time, so if we can pass through it quickly, which we did, we can get through this without having to actually fire or get out of that guy's way. He just gets out of the way for us. And it's really important that some of these rooms that do have those cycles, that we do get those cycles. Whoops. That's bad. That we do get those cycles. This next section is a very plain section of the game. There's a lot of jumping on platforms and just kind of like opening doors. If there was a time for a donation, this would be the time that we put donations in, because a lot of the rest of the route, there are a couple other sections that are kind of like pretty plain like this, but for the most part, this is the very first just kind of like plain part of the game. So in the meantime, we're going to be coming up on the HP potion here. This is the second HP potion, and in a normal any percent run, this is the only other HP potion we collect. I'll be collecting a third HP potion today just for safety. I want to be able to complete this run without having to lose, say, a minute in Golden Fortress, which is the main place that deaths are most likely to happen. It's a very difficult section of the game, and every death there loses usually at least a minute. Because the rooms that you do die in there are usually the ones that are very hard and far away to get to. We're going to thread the needle between these enemies here. It's very simple. Unless we screw it up like that. But yeah, that enemy there is a good example of what the arrow upgrade we got earlier helps us with. That enemy takes exactly 12 shots. If we were on the old upgrade, or without the upgrade, we would take 4 shots to at least kill it. With this, we can take 3 shots to kill it. It won't get another chance to get an attack off, so we don't have to worry about dodging it. You know, we save. It's a very minor time save we get from that there, and it's nice because of it. This is Johnny B missile. It's good for breaking walls. There's a few moments where we can use it throughout the run. And most times that we do use it, it's either because it has a very long range or because it can be used pretty safely. It's also does not cost very much meter, and that's useful for that as well, because we only will be having 1 bar of meter for most of this run. Meter is a pretty important resource throughout this early game, because in order to break walls, we need to be able to expend a fifth of the bar of meter. So that camp is taken not because of health, but because of meter. We specifically need more meter to get through the early game. We need about 6 shots, and we only get 5 shots on 1 bar, so we have to take a camp. This is the first boss. His name's Augustus. He's gonna send out a fist. Our job is to basically hit that fist as many times as possible before the second one comes out. If we do it properly and we hit both fists enough times, we will get the first cycle on him. This is hard to do because we don't really know where they're both gonna pop up at, or if they're gonna pop up in such a way that it will. Oh my goodness. That was really bad firing. I don't think I'm going to get this. Yeah, that was my fault. So, good firing looks like I don't kind of like... Good firing will look like consistent firing is the easiest way to say it. And I had a few moments there where I just was not very consistent. If I was even a little more consistent, that would have worked, because that was actually a pretty good pattern he gave us. An important thing to note is that he can send out both those hands at pretty much any time he wants. And you want them to be out late. Okay, luckily we had a pretty good second section of the fight. And that fight's pretty simple. That's really only one of 2 bosses we're going to be seeing throughout the game. There is a 3rd major boss, but we're going to skip him entirely. And I'll talk more about that when we get to that. But for now, we're going to be collecting the first of 4 required upgrades. This is the, I think it's like the something, stone of something. I don't remember what it's called. I'm sorry. Stone of Creation. And this lets us pretty much just jump farther whenever those, if you can see that green platform up there, that helps us jump farther. And we basically need that to get out of this area. So that's why we had to fight the first boss. So we're going to be making our way out of the area. If you remembered earlier, we died, and what we need to do with that is we need to collect our body. I'm also going to collect a couple extra chests on the way out. I normally don't do this, but it is a nice safety measure because it will give us an extra heart for the desert section. The desert section isn't incredibly dangerous. All the enemies do about 1 heart of damage, and we will have 6 hearts. But it is an incredibly long section, so there is a good chance that something could go wrong in a run. So that's grabbing our body. And now we kind of have another good section for donations. This next part is mainly empty rooms that we're going to be jumping through. We will be grabbing that extra chest for safety, and it's in about a room ahead. An important thing to note on any percent is how few upgrades we do get. Because you can have something like, I think about 9 potions by the end of the game. You can have a basic attack for shooting for like 6 bullets instead of the 4 that we have. There are another 2 specials and a 3rd special that we can use for defense that we're not going to get. We simply just don't need those things in an any percent. Because this is a Metroidvania, it is a little interesting in that fact that we kind of like figure out what the absolute bare minimum is, and then we can operate with that. So this camp is going to be 1 or 2 camps that we get, 1 of 4 camps throughout the game that we will be getting upgrades at, but it's one of the 2 most important camps because we need to get to a certain heart amount of hearts before we can perform any skips at all. And so we're going to be grabbing 4 hearts here. Yeah, that's 4 hearts. And those 4 hearts are going to be helping us throughout basically the entire game. So this next section, we're going to be entering into the desert section. Each section kind of has its own unique enemies in it. And this one is just kind of like the opening area, but as soon as we get past this opening area, you will notice some kind of new enemy types that we will get to. There'll be enemies that like regenerate. There'll be enemies that right now that you can already see that charge at us. Anybody that runs this game does not like this room. I'm going to tell you this right now. This room is very, very difficult to play optimally because shooting at those snags is a little difficult. So here we are, the first room of Remembrance Desert, which is kind of like in this ruin area. This is the arena for the second boss, but the second boss does not appear until we get a certain item. I've already taken 2 hearts of damage, it's not very good. And we basically just need to get through this section with as many hearts by the end of it as possible. So I will be playing this a little slower than I normally do. Mainly because I do not want to take any damage here. Taking any damage here would be not just less than optimal, it would be really terrible. Because if we die in this section, we will go all the way back. If we die before collecting the first skull, we lose all that time we had coming out here. Also, I took more damage. It's not very good. We would lose all the time we took getting out here, on top of the fact that if we died after getting the first skull and not the second one, we would have to fight that second boss because we could not get to that skull without having to fight him. So at that point, we would lose just an absolute astronomical amount of time getting back to the second skull. What am I doing? Okay, so I just performed it there, but that's called Early Desert. There's another skip called Early Desert, which is even earlier in that, which is pretty obviously just earlier than that. But we perform Early Desert because Early Desert only takes 1 heart of health, and it saves about 3 rooms of movement. So it makes it a pretty well worthwhile skip to go for. It saves about 30 seconds to a minute because those rooms that we skip are actually really long and somewhat dangerous. The early desert skip saves about 5, 10, maybe 15 seconds, and it costs us 2 hearts of health, and we just don't have that much health at this moment. I am operating on 3 hearts of health at the moment, which isn't that terrible. Admittedly, I have done with worse here, and even 2 hearts is not that terrible either. So we're getting through this section not too bad. This is usually, that last pillar is the last room where I really feel like things can go just astronomically wrong. We do have another room with little blue orbs we need to get past, but they are luckily not, they luckily are very consistent every time. You just need to know where you're jumping. So because we got through that room without damage, I'm not going to use the potion here. Instead, I'm just going to wait for the orbs to pass. Normally, I probably would use a potion there because, you know, I'm trying to go fast and, well, I feel like I would be able to take more risk that way. A lot of this game is kind of like balancing out the risk and reward. So here we are coming up on the first skull. There's a mini boss guarding it. I like to call him Antlion. Antlion's pretty simple. The goal is pretty much just to shoot the center of Antlion. We're going to send some missiles in him at first to hopefully get a 2 cycle. Okay, we did get 2 cycle. Nice. So 2 cycle doesn't save that much time, but it does look nice when we do perform it. I guess it's worth mentioning on that Skull 1 split, it's plus 40, plus like 50 at the moment, and the reason for that is because that extra safety chest we grabbed, that takes about like 30 extra seconds to go grab it, maybe more. So I'm not too surprised by the extra time that we have on there. We do save a little time later for grabbing that chest. We save about at least 20 seconds, I think, grabbing that chest versus getting a different chest. Either way, we do need to like grab a certain number of chests no matter what we do. And grabbing that one early just makes this desert section early. It also makes the next section, the bird section, much easier. So now we're going to make our way back down. We're going to make our way to the basically the most important power up of the game, which is the memory shaft. The memory shaft is not really a required power up. It's the only really optional power up we will get, but it lets us perform basically clips in certain sections of the game. There's one clip in particular that's useful, and also lets us damage boost, and that's also particularly useful throughout another couple sections of the game. So we'll be using 1 damage boost to save about a minute 30, and we'll be using a clip to save about 5 minutes worth of time. That was a really bad jump. My bad. So as you can see by that second skull we had, or that first skull that we had gotten, oh goodness. Things are starting to move around here now. Previously, you know, what stuff was kind of around that didn't really move, now it does move. And that's kind of what the second required power-up that we need to get does. The main reason we need this power-up is to get to the... Oop. Okay, that's fine. Is to get to the bird fight. The bird fight really only requires this power up to get to it. If we didn't need this power up, we could like completely skip it, probably in that section. There's also one other section I think that we need. Actually, I don't even think there's another section we needed outside of grabbing this power up and getting to the bird fight. So it's kind of a weird power up. It doesn't really have too many uses throughout the run, but it's still 100% required to do any percent. There's just no way around it at the time being. So as you may have noticed, it took us quite a few minutes to get here, but we're going to just go straight immediately back to the camp we started at. And we're going to do that by death warping in the menu. We could also death warp with the item we just got. That would save us time also, but you know, any way works, and death warping through the menu saves us the most in-game time. This game is the leaderboards are in-game time, so it's generally you play for in-game time. And yeah, we're making our way down the bird. We're also going to be discovering a camp on the way, and ooh, that was some bad movement. We're going to be discovering a camp along the way there. This is useful for later, and I'll talk a little bit more about the item that makes that useful, but for now we're just discovering the camp. It's pretty important that we don't take too many hits on the way there. This kind of like bird turret launching eggs at us, those do about 2 damage. That laser you just saw, that does 4. We don't want to get hit by that ever. Our safety potions, they restore 2 health, so that should give you a pretty good idea of just how punishing that is for us to get hit by it. But for the most part, this is not as dangerous as the last section. Mistakes here, even if they are more likely, are not nearly as punishing. Okay, good. We got through that pretty safely. So, you know, just more making our way over the bird fight. This would also be another good time for a donation, because these rooms are not very exciting. Except for when I screw them up really badly, then I guess they are a little more exciting. I don't think I have the right special out, so I can't do the quick strat. No, I don't. There is a way to instantly jump in this room, but I didn't have the right special out when I got here, so I didn't go for it. It saves about a second. So this is the bird fight. I'm going to concentrate for the bird fight, and I'll talk about it afterwards. Okay, so the bird, he lunges at us, as you could see. And when he lunges, he has a audio cue, and it's very important that I'm listening to that for that audio cue. If I don't get that audio cue, I do pretty much just get hit. And basically, when he starts off, he spends a little time moving around every time I hit him. I can get about 3 shots in at the start, and then I can get about 2 shots in after every one after that. And yeah, that's the bird fight. We will be seeing him again, but he won't be nearly as tanky those other times. The bird fight does damage. When you touch him, you take 2 damage, and when he hits you with his swipe, or the scythe, or whatever you want to call it, that does 3 damage. And that is absolutely detrimental to get hit by that. That's generally why I try not to get hit by anything else on the way to the bird fight, because the bird fight is a very punishing fight if you do it incorrectly. I think one of the probably the most important things about this game is just how incredibly punishing it can be. So we're coming up on just the only goal of this next section is to discover a camp. It's very simple, just to discover this camp. We're just gonna like take maybe a minute to get over there, and then that will be done. This is basically required for any point of this game to complete, and it will look like that we could maybe like, you know, skip through the wall like we did in Early Desert, but it won't quite work out. So unfortunately, we just have to do it the intended way. And if you can see here, there's kind of like a little gap there. That gap, we have tried to get through that gap a lot of times, and it doesn't work. There is an invisible wall there, basically. No matter how well you could line yourself up, you will not get through that gap. So we're now going to collect the last 2 chests we need to perform our skips. And it's very important where chests are located when we use them for skips. And we're basically just use them for anything in terms of salt usage. Because the farther away it is from the camp, the more movement we have to do on the way back. So it's not just going out there, but it's also coming back we have to worry about on a lot of chest collecting. In the normal route, we would grab an extra chest, but we still will save a little time on this safer route by getting that extra chest early. The extra chest would actually be in this room above here, and that has about 300 salt, which is just barely enough for whatever we need it for. So we're coming up on the next skip. It's called Bridge Skip. This is a very easy to perform skip. We just get hit 4 times on the bridge using the memory shaft that we had collected earlier. And that is Bridge Skip. That looks a little dangerous, but it's honestly the most consistent thing in this game. I think I have performed Bridge Skip 100% of the time. And I have even managed to die to that first mini-boss tank. I've managed to die just about everywhere in this game, but Bridge Skip is very simple to perform, so it's not really as dangerous as it looks. The next skip, though, is much more difficult. It's called Fake Town Skip, and basically how it works is we're going to reverse our characters the way they're standing in the air to clip into the cloud. There's 2 types of clip. There's a clean clip, and then there's like a... And then there's a clip that you basically get stuck in the center of the cloud and you need to jump quickly to get out of it. Okay, I've got the clean clip there, and that actually was a second try clip. That saves a ton of time. I actually probably will be ahead on these splits. Yeah, easily ahead. So we're going to turn to camp once again. Another way of returning to camp there would be going to the main menu, and it will put you back in the door you entered in. There's a lot of different ways that we can perform this, basically, but we just need to get to... So I'm going to grab my extra safety here. This is not required at all for a run, but we will use this in the safe routes, per se, the routes that do not basically want to die in Golden Fortress. Golden Fortress is an incredibly difficult section of the game, and every little piece of health matters a lot. So what we're going to do at the start of Golden Fortress is we're going to collect 2 chests, and we're going to upgrade our potions. Each potion upgrade is 1 heart, and we're going to have 3 potions now. So that's going to be 3 hearts for every potion upgrade. We're going to be getting... So with 2 potion upgrades, we're going to have another 9 hearts of damage we can take throughout Golden Fortress, which is just... It's just so nice. That's all I really need to say about it. Admittedly, menuing is a little weird. I don't do this too much. So while I do grab these chests, there would be another moment to put in maybe a donation here. There's not too much going on in these rooms. These rooms are a little annoying to move around, but I wouldn't talk too much about them because, yeah, there's nothing really in these rooms. So this is Golden Fortress. Every room of Golden Fortress has the ability to go wrong, and you will take damage for it. This makes this a very difficult section of the game for any percent, and it's probably the reason I love to play any percent the most, because we just basically make the game look like a total scrub. Every enemy will look just really silly to us, because we will be able to just dodge around them, or look just, you know, basically absolutely stunning as we go through this. So this is the first difficult room, I would like to say. Ooh. That went absolutely perfectly somehow, despite having some minor issues. So we're going to fight turrets now. These guys will unlock a pathway for us to take later that will save us some time. Oh, provided that we don't die on them. And we're going to be going for a thing I like to call turret skip, or turret cutscene skip. All we need to do this is to get out of this room before this cutscene goes off. And we have properly performed it. So these rooms require a little bit of concentration, so I will be silent from time to time here. So those first 2 rooms require a lot of speed to get through them without really taking too much damage. There's 1 damage boost in each of those, and if I only take 2 damage going through those rooms, I consider those good rooms. Like not to get hit by that guy today, that'd be nice. Oops. Oh, that's not pretty. So you'll see these, notice these kind of like guys on treadmills. They got the horse face on. Pretty important that when we kill them, they will deactivate a lot of the traps that are in our way. But because that takes quite a bit of time to not only kill them, it takes about 5 seconds to kill one of them, and it takes about another 5 seconds for the trap to disarm. So it's pretty important that we actually, like, you know, don't have to kill them if we don't, or don't not kill them if we don't have to. So that's the first lock of Golden Fortress. Important that we get that lock correct whenever we do perform it. Oop. And we're gonna death warp now. So the reason that we killed turrets earlier was to make sure that we can do this death warp. The reason why this death warp works really well is because it's right at the entrance, and we can simply put ourselves right at that camp we saw maybe 20 minutes ago. 15, 20 minutes ago. So yeah, we're right back at where the turrets were. That's why we bother to fight turrets. It only takes about 20, 30 seconds to get those turrets, and it takes about another 15 seconds for every death warp we choose to do. I choose to do 1 death warp, and I could go for, say, 0 death warps and not fight the turrets, but the difficulty in that is... it's extremely difficult is the right word to put it. It's really hard to save all that time without dying. So I'm gonna go for a safe strat in this next room. Normally I would kind of like just go gung-ho here, but you know, sometimes it's probably better just to take a safe strat. And that's to kill this guy. Normally you wouldn't kill that guy because he just deactivates this laser. We could normally just damage boost through it twice. And it's not really all that threatening of an enemy, so it's normally like in our favor to do so. Oh goodness. This enemy we have to take out, or this guy on the treadmill we have to take care of. If we don't, there's a laser on the exit of the room that we simply cannot get past, this one. And so we have to do that there. This next room's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. We just need to kill this tower and everything else behind it to progress safely. One thing that's pretty important about Golden Fortress is keeping it safe. It seems kind of silly because, you know, we're trying to go fast. You know, going safe doesn't seem like a huge priority. But if we don't go safe, we're going to have a huge problem later on. So that's the first 2 locks of Golden Fortress down. And I collect my body there. The reason I collect my body there and not earlier is because every time you collect your body, you actually gain all of your health back. And so I use that as a free health refill in this case. Ooh, this is going really badly. Oh my god, that went terribly. Okay, I'm going to take another death warp here, actually. It seems really silly because, you know, we just took a death warp, but taking death warps in the right places is just kind of like part of the run. I could have gotten a PB on this, actually, but I'm going to make it so that this is safe because that was a really poorly done room. Normally, I only want to take 1 to 2 hits in that room, but I took like 4 in there, which is like all my potions, and it's just not really acceptable. So all those potions that we need to get are basically for this 3rd section. I should definitely talk more about the 3rd section since we're actually at it. And the 3rd section is simply put the hardest section of Golden Fortress. Every room here is dangerous. That first room was dangerous. This second room is dangerous. If anything does not go the way you planned it to, it will go incredibly wrong. So we do fight this bird here, and that might seem a little strange, but we need to break 2 locks in this room. They take 3 shots each. They slow you down quite a bit. These 2 here can get in your way as well, and this room, if you choose not to combat this room and just try to go through it, you will lose a ton of health for doing so. And you know, once again, it's just sometimes we really need to just go for the safest strat. So that room, it looks a little sketchy. It's pretty consistent, provided that you can just do everything quickly. This room is incredibly difficult, and if something goes wrong, it will go incredibly wrong. So I'm going to be quiet here. Okay, we got through that room. That was a really bad clear of that room, unfortunately. Normally I'm hoping to only take 1 damage going through it, but we'll take that. Okay, so that room went really, really, really well. That room is incredibly dangerous. There are so many things going on in that room, and in order to get through that door, I actually spam missiles on it, because missiles are faster than just regular firing. And basically, anytime I get through a room like that a little bit faster, it's worth my time. We're breaking the last lock. That's just for safety. There's no other reason to do that. That last lock is incredibly dangerous. Or this last lock has ended runs before, but usually it's very consistent. It's actually a very consistent lock provided you do it correctly. I actually screwed up that room, and I still think we're going to be able to get through this pretty easily. Not only because of that, but we also have the extra potion. Okay, cool, we got through that room. So that room does not look very safe. It's actually incredibly safe. This is the last upgrades we'll be getting for the rest of the game. We grabbed 2 energy upgrades just to help on the second phase of the last boss. The second phase is of the last boss, or the second half of the second phase, attacks really quickly. Once he's under half health, he really starts to amp up his attacks, and we don't want him to attack too much. So I do save that energy to get in a little bit of free damage using the memory shaft. And it's probably the only time I use memory shaft for combat throughout the entire run. The first phase is also incredibly dangerous. In fact, this entire final boss is incredibly dangerous. It's just the easiest way to put it. The first phase shoots out projectiles. On the newest patch, those projectiles do 2 damage. And those 2 damage projectiles hit really, really hard. Mainly because they're just all over the place, and you can just end up bumping into a whole bunch of them. Another thing that happens is there's going to be a lot of like mice running around the edges of the arena, and those do 3 damage. I don't have a ton of health to work with, even with that extra potion I picked up. And the last thing he'll try to do is he'll try to crush us. He will constantly follow us around the room, and sometimes he'll just go try to crush us outright. If we get crushed, we die, and that is a huge time loss. We don't like getting crushed on this boss. Luckily, on the newest patch, he doesn't move as fast as he used to. On the older patch, I lost, I think, half of my runs to being crushed by this boss. This boss is incredibly difficult on the older patch. Luckily, on the newer patch, he's a lot easier. Okay, he's trying to crush us now. He's still trying to crush us. Okay, so that's the first phase. The second phase, he has a whole bunch of attacks. The only attack we don't want to see is the one where he throws eggs at us. I call it getting at least 5 egg attacks on him, the farmer's market, because it is honestly a huge problem when you get that many eggs. It wastes a ton of time. Oh, that was an accident. It wastes a ton of time to get that many eggs on the final boss. So we really don't want to see those eggs. Yeah, those are the eggs right there. The best attack for us to get is the one where he sends out a bunch of mice. And that's the one right there. The reason for the mice being so nice is it takes such a long time for him to do this attack. And we get a lot of chances to hit him. So he also has improved versions of all the attacks that he does to use, except for the eggs. The eggs are the only one that don't have an improved version, per se. Another thing he can do is a laser. We don't see the laser too much. It's pretty uncommon for him to use it, but it does take a lot of time for him to use it, and it's really nice when he does too. So Ooh, this is interesting. Luckily we have all our potions. So he's going for this again. So the other attacks that we didn't see is not only the laser, but we also didn't see another one where he sends out those mouse cursor looking things, and those are kind of a problem, but there's a one where they're golden, and those are a massive problem. Oh, and I managed to I managed to activate the glitch. I'll talk about that real shortly here, but that would be the end of the run. So what I need to talk about on this section specifically is that last attack he didn't use is the one where he sends out golden mouse cursors. Those last on the screen for like a minute. They move really slow. They look just like the purple ones. They're just, you know, they're slower. They take up a lot of space. But this here is a really weird glitch that occasionally happens. And it's the credits cutscene glitch is what I like to call it. It's a relatively new glitch. It was added in 1.2 on accident. It's in all versions of the game as long as you're playing on a controller. All you have to do is press L1 twice, and you'll skip through the endgame cutscenes. Those endgame cutscenes actually take quite a bit of time, and unfortunately, we got stuck in them. We can't get our final time without getting through the cutscenes, so this is almost always a run-over situation. And yeah, we're once again in another run-over. So we're in a run-over situation, but I honestly would be happy showing this off, even with this glitch in. This is probably the most unfortunate glitch to get in a run, because this run probably would have been a sub 40 looking at the splits. It says 40:11, but the time in the game is usually 30 seconds behind it. So yeah, this glitch, you press L1 twice, and then if you press it fast enough, which seems to be the case, and you're not pressing A, you'll be able to go through these credits here, and you'll be able to get to your time. It's a little unfortunate that it happened here, but you know, that's kind of the nature of the run sometimes. It's just something happens, and it's a little unfortunate that it happened that way. But yeah, this is the any percent run for Dandara. I'm hoping that someone will be interested in showing it off in the recent marathons I'll be putting it in. I won't be naming the marathon specifically so that I can submit this to multiple marathons and be able to talk more about them there.